Now, today marks 4 years since the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan, which culminated in the fall of Kabul and the withdrawal of U.S. and coalition forces from the country. The celebrations in Kabul come as Afghanistan struggles with mass unemployment, a faltering economy, and widespread food insecurity. Women are barred from most jobs and banned from education after the 6th grade. Now, neighbouring Iran and Pakistan have begun deporting Afghans who fled the Taliban rule, leaving public services struggling to handle the sudden influx. For women in particular, returning to Afghanistan means living under some of the harshest restrictions of any country, leaving many fearing that they have no future under the Taliban regime.
It was a return she had been dreading. After the Iranian government cracked down on Afghan migrants, Rahela and her teenage daughters moved back to her father's home in the Afghan city of Herat. Separated from her husband and with an elderly father, Rahela finds herself without a male guardian. Under the Taliban's laws, women must be accompanied by a man to travel any significant distances, leaving Rahela effectively confined to her home.
There's nothing I can say about any plans I have, because our hands are tied. In a society where you can't do anything, there's no room for making plans either.
For her daughter Sahar, returning to Afghanistan was a move from bad to worse.
In Iran, they didn't allow me to study the field I was passionate about. When I came back to Afghanistan, I hoped to continue my education. But the Taliban shut everything down, and I couldn't study here either.
Under the Taliban, Afghanistan is the only country in the world to bar girls from education beyond primary school. The only way they continue any kind of education is through religious schools, known as madrasas. Here, they study the Quran, Islamic law, Arabic, and the teaching of the Prophet Muhammad. Before the Taliban returned to power in 2021, Faiza had completed the 12th grade. Her goal was to become a doctor. She says she hopes to return to university one day and fulfill that dream.
When my family sees that I'm learning Quranic sciences and that I'm practicing all the teachings of the Quran in my life, of the Quran, they will allow us to go to university.
Sahar does not share Faiza's optimism.
I see the future as very bleak. At first, I thought that in my own country I could achieve something or reach a good position. But after coming here, I realized that it's even worse than Iran.
But that doesn't mean she's given up hope entirely.
Nothing is permanent. God has created day and night to replace one another, because day passes and night comes, and vice versa. This regime might change too. Maybe we'll reach our dreams one day. A person always holds hope. Without hope, life isn't possible.
More, we're joined now by human rights activist and Afghan feminist Pashtana Durrani, who's also the founder of a digital school network, Learn Afghanistan. Thanks for being with us. Now, it's been 4 years since the Taliban seized power and essentially barred women from public life. Do you have any reason to believe that this might change someday?
I do hope that at some point the world, the international community takes in notice of that. I hope so. The CEDA, it comes into acting and when it comes to Afghanistan, but I don't think Taliban are going to change it anytime soon.
How do you feel about the way the international community has dealt with the Taliban so far?
I mean, Russia just recognized Afghanistan. China is in cahoots and gives out and takes mining contracts. A lot of other Asian powers are in Afghanistan, and majority of European countries are also sort of appeasing the Taliban. So I do think I'm very disappointed when it comes to international community in Afghanistan.
And what do you see as the right path then to making life better for the people of Afghanistan? Should there be more efforts made to isolate the Taliban, or are you more in favor of more diplomatic engagement and cooperation?
I think the most important reason is understanding is that you have to look at Afghanistan, where Afghanistan there is no transition period, there was no grievance period, there was no accountability by the international community when it comes to Taliban, and they're still given money, they're still given power, they're still there. There's no accountability system in place. So I think the one I'm hoping that the one thing the international community do is develop an accountability system when it comes to the Taliban. It could be through diplomatic engagement, it could be through isolation, it could be both, but it definitely cannot be without an accountability. And I think right now the international community is just doing what is appeasing the Taliban.
Now, the Taliban are hoping to develop the country economically. They are looking also to develop tourism as a source of income. What would you tell people who are considering traveling to Afghanistan?
You can't develop a country without the 50% of the country being not able to work, not able to get educated, being isolated, being treated as second or third class citizen in its own country. And anyone traveling to Afghanistan, contributing to Afghanistan, in the end of the day, I think everybody has to ask that question. You being able to do this is because of your foreign passport, not because you are someone special. And if you are able to travel there and you still continue to do that propaganda for the Taliban, I think it's a shame that any travel would do that. So at the end of the day, even if you're traveling to Afghanistan, at least show the real picture that women of Afghanistan are oppressed, women of Afghanistan cannot access workplace, and girls in Afghanistan cannot go to school while they can roam around freely.
How is the Afghan diaspora, people like yourself, helping those in the country who are subjected to oppressive Taliban rule?
I think there are amazing initiatives out there. There are accountability systems. There are organizations that are not only making sure that there is an account of the Taliban's abuse of human rights, but also ensuring that girls are able to access education. So right now, girls in Afghanistan, in our schools at least, there are 14 provinces that we are covering. There are other initiatives that are also doing amazing stuff. And then at the same time, there are radio news channels. There are other SIM card programs that are educating women. They are empowering women through jobs and everything else. So I think a lot of people in the diaspora are doing their best to ensure that women of Afghanistan, the girls of Afghanistan, are not forgotten. And then at the same time, there are different initiatives that sustain those efforts.
How optimistic are you yourself about the possibility of your visiting your homeland anytime in the future?
I'm always going to be optimistic when it comes to Afghanistan. I always hope that I can visit Afghanistan, hopefully legally sometime soon. But at the same time, I am very hopeful about the future of Afghanistan because of my students, because of the people who believe in education, and because of the people who believe in women's rights.
And long term, what do you see? You say you're hopeful. We can all be hopeful, but what do you see as a realistic future for the country, given its very difficult past?
I think the way forward cannot be without the 50% of the country, which is the girls and women, and the minorities, and the religious minorities, and ethnic minorities. And I think that all of those have to be considered. And also in the future, you also have to consider that economically, if you want to develop the country, there has to be more pathways for women. There has to be more pathways towards education. And that cannot be without asking women or including women or ethnic minorities or religious minorities.
Pashtana, thank you very much for speaking with us today. That was Pashtana Durrani, director of the nonprofit Learn in Afghanistan.
Thank you.
For more, we're joined now by Ibraheem Bahiss, senior analyst on Afghanistan at the Crisis Group's Asia program. Welcome to DW. Now, with the Taliban's return to power 4 years ago, the war in the country ended more or less overnight. But can we really talk about peace if half of the population is being oppressed?
Yeah, today, as you pointed out, marks the 4th year of the Taliban's takeover. And for Afghans living here in Afghanistan and here in Kabul, this has different ramifications. On the one hand, you have peace in the country. These past 4 years have been some of the most peaceful years in the past 4 to 5 decades. the access that the international organizations, including humanitarian organizations, have is almost unprecedented. On the other hand, you see the abject poverty that is prevalent here in Afghanistan, the struggle of the ordinary Afghans to provide for themselves and provide for their families. And as you pointed out, on top of that, to exacerbate that, there is the restrictions on Afghans, particularly Afghan women, whether it's their ability to study, their ability to work, their ability to travel, or even participate in political and social activities. So cumulatively, that has also added stress on many Afghans, including, for example, the middle class who might be able to get by daily, but they have aspirations for their families, for themselves, for their wives, daughters, sisters.
Have you observed
any
resistance within Afghanistan to women being banished from public life?
I think we're not seeing a lot of violent resistance, but what we are seeing is what you might even term civil disobedience. On paper, for example, Afghanistan has one set of rules for women, and when you imagine what Afghans women could be living like, it's a very dystopian picture. But when you are here in the streets of Kabul, for example, this does not, I should clarify, this does not apply to all the entire country, but in some of the big cosmopolitan multi-ethnic cities like Kabul, Herat, Mazar, you do see a level of defiance of these rules. You do see women out and about without male guardians, sometimes not wearing hijabs. Now, that comes with a lot of risk for women. Just 2 weeks ago, there were reports that the Taliban here in Kabul, very close by actually, had arrested 7 women for defying some of their rules. But I think overall, you do see Afghan women pushing back against some of these rules, and on the streets here you see almost a type of unspoken equilibrium where the rules on paper say one thing, but the level of agency that Afghan women are able to employ sometimes go beyond these restrictions that are there on paper.
All right. One of the women interviewed in our report holds hope for regime change, she said. But things as they stand, who could challenge the status quo?
At this point in time, the Taliban have uncontested control of the entire country. There are really no armed opposition groups that have the capacity to dislodge the Taliban in the near term. But there are factors at play in Afghanistan. Afghans do want more than what they have right now. I think there is a level of hope, but the level of unemployment, for example, is beyond comprehension. We are seeing a lot of pressure on Afghans. That's not to. So I think some might consider that could lead to either the Taliban regime adapting to meet the needs of Afghans and to meet the pressures it will increasingly face, or it could lead to a resistance against the Taliban. But again, at this point in time, I think when you speak to ordinary Afghans, the talk is not one of trying to change the regime, trying to overthrow the regime. It is about accommodation. It is about hope that the international community and the regime will come to some kind of compromise where both are willing to make compromises for the betterment and advancement of Afghans.
I briefly want to look at that because some experts believe that not recognizing the Taliban, which so far the government has only been recognized by Russia, does nothing for women's rights and hinders engagement on other critical issues. Briefly, where do you stand on that? What would be the right path to making life better for all Afghans?
I think at the international level, we have seen 2 different experiments at play. On the one hand, you have seen the path of isolation. The Taliban are essentially a pariah state. They have a case pending in the International Court of Justice for violations of the Convention on Discrimination Against Women. They have their leaderships have pending arrest warrants at the International Court of Criminal Court, So on the one hand, you have this path of isolation and trying to punish the Taliban for their policies. Whether we have seen any change in the Taliban as a result of this approach, I think remains debatable. And I would argue that the leverage that these countries might have on Afghanistan has diminished as a result of this. On the other hand, you have regional countries who have, particularly led by China and Russia, who have taken the path of increased engagement with the Taliban. They're primarily driven by security and economic concerns, and women's rights, relatively speaking, is down the priority. But it has led to a level of leverage being built, mutual leverage, one might call it, being built. But has it been enough to change the Taliban's approach to women? Unfortunately, is again, the answer to that is also negative.
Yeah, we'll have to leave it there. That was Ibraheem Bahiss of the Crisis Group.